Now, I've made no secret on this show this year that I'm disappointed with the two major parties. I know a lot of you are too. When you have the Liberal Party signing up to net zero policies and Labor under pressure to distance themselves from the Greens, it's actually clear the voices of mainstream Australians are actually getting pushed aside. So, like many of you, I want to learn more about what's out there. And that's why I'm dedicating this part of the show every single week to learning what else is available to us on the ballot. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Katter's Australia Party Queensland State Leader, Robbie Katter. Robbie, thanks for joining me on Bernardi. Give me the elevator pitch about the principles that guide Katter's Australia Party.
Thanks, Cory. Pleasure, mate. The principles that I guess guide us, we've seen a gap in the political spectrum on economic nationalism in making sure that we've got some of those core industries that we've been very good at doing don't erode into nothing, and that's well suited to the area where we're strongest in north of Australia and where we represent, and that's important to us. But a lot of those social aspects, that the degradation of a lot of those social issues. I heard you talk about gender language before. We put a bill into Parliament, in the state Parliament, about protecting people's rights to use and gender and based language that we're accustomed to in that traditional language, just to provide securities on that. I know the others don't, certainly the LNP didn't want to touch that in Queensland, and I'm happy to play that role and take the spears in the back from all the lefties in there. And I think that's an important function to play in today's Parliament and to provide a counterpoint to that growing sort of white green emergence that's in there and very much a part of our Australian parliaments today.
Yeah, that's a really important point. We need these agent provocateurs, these cattle prods, if you will, to prompt the big parties who are going to form government at a state or federal level to do the right thing or to think outside of the little box that they've got. So more strength to your arm there. But what do you think of the industries that you mentioned that we're neglecting from a national security standpoint? And how's that going to play out in places like North Queensland, which you mentioned?
Well, I'll try and put it in a real context. And say in Mount Isa, where I live, we draw copper out of the ground, have a copper smelter. It gets sent to Townsville. There's about another 300 manufacturing jobs, and it's advanced manufacturing. They take dirt out of the ground and turn it into copper, 99.9% pure copper, ready to be turned into copper wire. Then we send it to China and bring it back with plastic coating. And when COVID hit, we started running out of copper wire. Now, you need a real effort, and it is difficult. You would know, just as well as me, Cory, how hard it is to make that last bit work so that we can do that copper wire ourselves. But it's been a big fight to keep that copper smelter even there. And they're the big fights that someone needs to dig in, and it's a lot of work. It's investing a lot of time, and you need a good stronghold in your own seat to be able to fight those things. And that's where I think we can play a role in making sure those transmission lines are built, dams are built, our ports are running efficiently, our rail's running efficiently. If you do those things right, then you can create a platform for manufacturing to keep gas prices down, and that's important. All these things that have blown off the scale in terms of costs. We've had the highest energy costs in the world at one point in Mount Isa, in the Northwest Mineral Province, one of our great wealth producers in the country. And that's just because governments dropped the ball and they just devoid themselves of any responsibility. And we've gone back into those areas and, like say, building the transmission line out to here. It's not all about North Queensland, North Australia, and some of these things are difficult. But also, in this election, we want to have a real focus on defence, and I think there needs to be some hard conversations, and the blowtorch needs to be put to the government on making sure that they follow through on some of these statements. So there's a good, viable option there at the Darwin port to renationalise, or at least take a stronghold back in there. And make some of those things happen. They're ugly topics and public don't like to touch them, and a lot of politicians don't, but they're the sort of things that we like getting our hands dirty on and forcing and playing the brutal game of politics to get outcomes on.